Welcome to your broker admin, where we dive into the latest review outcomes, share practical tips in our Humpday helpers, and feature special industry guest interviews to help you stay on top of the game. Whether you're flying solo or part of a team, we're here to help you streamline your processes and work smarter, not harder.
Time for another episode of Your Broker Admin. But before we sail into episode 82, here's this week's bonus history bite. On this day in history, July the 29th gives us a couple of very different examples of formidable forces. In 1588, the supposed invincible Spanish Armada was sighted approaching England when the British fleet, led by Lord Charles Howard and Sir Francis Drake, engaged and defeated them utilising smaller, faster ships with long-range cannon. The decisive moment came when burning fire ships were sent into the anchored Spanish formation off the coast of Calais, causing chaos. Less than half of the original 130-strong fleet made it back to Spain. And in 1908, former English General Sir Robert Baden-Powell forms the Boy Scouts in England. This movement quickly grew, and its popularity led to the establishment of the Girl Guides, a parallel organisation for girls formed in 1910. Today, the Scouts have millions of members operating across more than 170 countries under the World Organisation of the Scout Movement. What more can I say? Dib, dib, dib. Moving on to the present day, this week on YBA, we'll kick things off with the reviews wrap-up, covering the week ending the 24th of July 2026, with interest savings, a lending opportunity that could easily have passed us by, and some thought-provoking client conversations. Then we'll move into this week's Humpday Helper, where I provide some clarification around NAB's somewhat confusing communications on home loan repayment frequencies and direct debits. I'm Rob Cummings. Thanks for listening in, and let's get this week's episode underway. This week in the reviews wrap-up, we look at outcomes from loan reviews completed during the week ending the 24th of July 2026. It was another successful week with some solid outcomes. We had 4 reviews completed that resulted in rate reductions, delivering around $2,400 of interest savings, along with 2 more lending opportunities totaling $870,000. This week's best outcome was with ANZ, 0.1% rate reduction on a sizable owner-occupied loan, providing the client with an interest saving of $1,170. Whilst the other 3 rate reductions were all smallish at 0.05%, one of those loans was well over $1 million, so still a decent interest saving. There were a couple of different opportunities uncovered this week from the client review conversations. One was for an internal refinance of $370,000 from St George, where the client's rate was sitting at 6.74%. Apparently, there was a 0.3% loading on the rate back from when it settled as an LMI loan. Due to a rising property value, the LVR is now well under 80%, but St George won't remove the loading. The other was a commercial investment property purchase with a funding requirement of around $500,000. The clients had already identified a property and were ready to discuss finance with somebody. Now on to this week's client review conversations. The first of the week was with a client who is a long-term customer of Beyond Bank, with their loan settling back in 2017 when they purchased their current home. This was a first-time review with this client for us. When completing the review, we quickly discovered that rate was already exceptionally good at 5.94%, so clearly no movement there. We rang and spoke with the client to advise a review had been completed, confirming the current rate was already a great one, comparatively speaking, hence there being no change. They seemed a little surprised about how well the rate compared to others, but were happy to know that. We also spoke about the significant increase in their property value and the relatively low debt level against it, so they now have heaps of equity. The conversation then led to options on how to possibly leverage that equity. The client indicated an interest in potentially buying an investment property, but was unsure of their borrowing capacity to allow this. We suggested their best place to start would be a conversation with the broker to determine their maximum borrowing capacity. They said that was a good idea, but would leave it for a couple of months as they wanted to clear up a couple of small debts before then. We advised the client that we would let the broker know and that they will contact them when ready. The client was appreciative of the review and the call to chat about these things. And the second one, an ING customer who's had their loan with them since 2023. Again, another first-time review for us with this particular client. The rate with ING was already decent at 6.09%, and therefore no further reduction offered. We rang and spoke with the husband as we were unable to get in contact with the wife, who had been nominated as the primary contact by the broker. We confirmed a review had been completed and the outcome. He wasn't overly concerned about the rate. He did, however, comment that it was good to know it was a competitive one. The conversation quickly moved on to the increase in the property value, which he was well aware of. He'd had a quick look at the property report we sent out, but not in detail. We asked if they had any future plans. He stated they were actually looking to buy a commercial investment property. He'd already found a suitable property with the asking price around $450 plus GST. They hadn't started any negotiations at this point yet, and the property has an existing tenant. The client commented that he had been looking for a while now, but hadn't spoken with anyone about it as yet, just been doing his own research on Google. This property was in the general location they were looking for, not far from home and in their price range. They don't want to spend too much money on a property and take on a huge debt. He confirmed they do have an accountant, but not a financial planner. The client also mentioned at this point they were interested in exploring buying the property through a super fund as a result of his own research. We suggested he speak with his accountant before committing to anything. When talking generally about the whole thing, he further commented that maybe down the track, he might leave his current PAYG job and start his own business, which he could easily operate out of this property. So the bigger plan was now starting to evolve. We asked if a discussion with the broker would be appropriate at this stage, to which he replied yes. We then proceeded to book in a meeting for the broker and client to discuss in more detail and start exploring options, which included potentially using the equity in their property. When we spoke with the broker afterwards, they acknowledged that they hadn't spoken with the client for 2 years or more and was a little surprised that we had spoken with the husband and the end outcome. They had been of the opinion that the wife mainly controlled the finances in their household. Needless to say, they were glad we had spoken with the husband in the end. And in summary, the sobering realisation this week was that without the review process creating the reason to reconnect with the client after more than 2 years, this commercial lending opportunity may well have passed them by. Consistency creates conversations, and conversations create opportunities. This week's Humpday Helper number 184 hopefully provides some clarity around some recent confusing communication from NAB regarding setting up direct debits for home loan repayments. A couple of months ago, NAB changed repayment cycles when submitting deals through AOL. I'm not sure if this was widely communicated to the broker network, but it certainly wasn't something we were aware of until it started happening. Whilst AOL still gives you the option to select weekly, fortnightly or monthly repayments, the system now defaults to monthly when the loan is created by NAB. This then flows through to the direct debit setup. The problem is when the client has specifically requested weekly or fortnightly repayments, but the loan is created with a monthly repayment frequency. A broker brief was recently released by NAB advising that direct debits must match the contracted repayment frequency. If a customer wants to make payments outside that cycle, for example, fortnightly payments against a monthly repayment frequency, they would need to set up a recurring transfer from their transaction account instead. The direct debit must cover the full minimum repayment amount or more. However, the instructions published on NAB's website created some confusion by suggesting that new home loan direct debits could be set up weekly, fortnightly or monthly. So naturally, a little confusion followed. After confirming with NAB, we now have some clarification. Borrowers can in fact have their direct debit set up weekly or fortnightly, but this needs to be arranged after settlement. The options are: the client can contact NAB directly to arrange the change, or alternatively, the broker can complete an updated direct debit request form, have it signed by the client, and submit it to the loan modifications team. The slight catch with the second option is that the form requires a wet signature, which means the client may still possibly end up contacting NAB through their banking app to finalise the request. So, not the smoothest process, but hopefully this clears up some of the confusion.
Thanks for listening to your broker admin. If you've got feedback, questions, or a topic you'd like covered on the show, you can now send it through via our Contact the Show page. The link is in the episode notes. If the link's not clickable in your player, just copy it from the show notes or head to the episode description on your phone. A rating on Apple Podcasts, a review on Podchaser, or a follow on Spotify all help the show reach the people it's built for. This has been your broker admin, for those who like their process neat.